This is Dr.RED Panda.
How did Spain conquer the mighty Inca Empire with just 168 men? Was it solely due to the massive gap in weaponry between the two sides? Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Red Panda. Today, let's dive into this incredible chapter of history, the mythic Battle of Cajamarca. Now, let's travel back in time to November 16th, 1532. On this day, in the Incan city of Cajamarca, a historic meeting took place between Atahualpa, the emperor of the Inca Empire, and Francisco Pizarro, the leader of the Spanish expedition. At the time, the Inca Empire was the most powerful empire in South America, stretching from modern-day southern Colombia to central Peru. It spanned an area of 2 million square kilometers, making it larger than any European country of that era. Representing King Charles I of Spain, who also claimed the title of Holy Roman Emperor and ruled vast territories across Europe and the Americas, Pizarro's expedition consisted of only 106 infantrymen and 62 cavalrymen, a total of just 168 men. These Spaniards were deep in foreign territory, 1,600 kilometers away from the Spanish colony in Panama. In contrast, Atahualpa held the home field advantage. His empire boasted a population of 16 million people, and 80,000 soldiers were stationed in Cajamarca. On paper, the odds seemed insurmountable. 80,000 against 168. At first glance, it looked like the Spaniards were doomed to be utterly crushed by the Inca forces. At the start of the meeting, a Spanish priest handed the Inca emperor a Bible, claiming it contained the words of God, hoping to convert him to Catholicism. Confident in his position with 80,000 troops, in a matter of moments, the 168 Spaniards, with a cost of 5 Spanish lives, slaughtered 2,000 Inca soldiers, captured Atahualpa, and demanded a ransom of gold to fill an entire room. 8 months later, although Pizarro received the ransom, he mercilessly executed the emperor, dismantling the very heart of the Inca Empire. The most obvious explanation for this shocking victory was the disparity in weaponry. The Spanish arsenal could be divided into 3 main categories: firearms, steel weapons, and horses. However, firearms alone were not the decisive factor. The Spaniards used arquebus, which had a slow rate of fire, long reloading times, and poor accuracy. Moreover, Pizarro's expedition carried only a few dozen of them. Despite this, the loud explosions, combined with the flash of fire and clouds of smoke, were terrifying to the Incas, who mistook them for divine thunderbolts. The psychological shock alone often caused Inca warriors to panic and flee. Even more effective than the arquebus were the razor-sharp steel swords, spears, and other weapons. These could easily pierce the armor and shields of the Inca warriors, inflicting devastating damage. In contrast, Inca weapons, mostly made of stone, bronze, or wood, were no match for Spanish steel. Their armor proved practically useless, as fragile as paper when faced with advanced weaponry. Horses, meanwhile, were the tanks of the pre-modern battlefield. Their speed, power, and sheer size could easily break enemy formations, creating chaos and terror. To the Incas, who had never seen horses before, Spanish cavalry appeared to be monstrous, half-human, half-beast creatures. This fear and confusion only amplified the Spaniards' dominance in the battle. From a weapons perspective, it's clear why Spanish soldiers, riding horses, clad in steel armor and wielding sharp swords, could easily cut down poorly armed infantry. Their ability to strike down opponents with precision and ease is hardly surprising. After all, the fact that 168 men ultimately defeated the mighty Inca Empire is undeniably remarkable. This narrative, while compelling and widely popularized in dramatized accounts, only tells part of the story. The Spanish didn't conquer the Inca Empire with just 168 men in a quick and decisive campaign. In reality, it took the Spanish over 40 years to fully subjugate the Inca Empire. The Battle of Cajamarca, though extraordinary in showcasing a small force triumphing against overwhelming odds, was merely a small-scale conflict. While the Spanish held a clear advantage in weaponry, their numbers were minuscule. Even with reinforcements, their forces never exceeded a few thousand men, whereas the Inca Empire had a population of 16 million. How did the Spanish achieve victory? Atahualpa and his 80,000-strong army found themselves in Cajamarca because the Inca Empire had just undergone a civil war, with Atahualpa emerging as the victor. In 1527, the old king, Huayna Capac, died unexpectedly, plunging the empire into chaos. Atahualpa and his half-brother Huascar fought a civil war over the throne. The two brothers had strong supporters, with Atahualpa controlling the northern part of the empire and Huascar ruling the south. After several years of fierce fighting, Atahualpa triumphed in 1532, but the civil war caused deep divisions that were never fully healed. This internal fragmentation weakened the empire, which became one of the reasons for its eventual downfall. Meanwhile, Francisco Pizarro, who had heard of the powerful empire to the south while in Panama, knew that the Inca Empire was embroiled in a civil war and saw this as an opportunity to strike. In 1531, Pizarro set out from Panama with a small but well-equipped force, arriving in northern Peru in 1532. He then crossed the Andes and entered the heart of the Inca Empire. Atahualpa had just finished the civil war and was preparing to march with his army to the capital, Cusco. Upon hearing of the Spaniards' arrival, he decided to meet Pizarro in Cajamarca. At that time, he was accompanied by 80,000 troops, intending to display his military strength in front of the Spaniards, but the encounter ended tragically for him. One of the causes of the Civil War was smallpox. The disease was brought to the Americas by Columbus and reached the Inca Empire around 1526. Smallpox not only caused widespread deaths among the people but also claimed the lives of the old king and many of his advisors, creating a power vacuum that led to the Civil War. Had it not been for the devastation of smallpox, the Spanish would have faced a united and powerful Inca Empire. Furthermore, Pizarro's advantage wasn't just in his military force. The Spaniards had writing, whereas the Inca Empire did not. Writing acted as a system for preserving and passing on knowledge and experiences across generations. Pizarro also drew from the strategies and tactics used during the Spanish conquest of the Aztecs. This gave the Spanish a decisive advantage in terms of intelligence and information. In contrast, the Inca had almost no knowledge of the Spanish invasion. The only source of information came from a messenger who had traveled for 2 days from the coast to the interior with Pizarro. The messenger provided the Inca emperor with skewed information, claiming that Pizarro was merely a ragtag group and that 200 Incan soldiers could easily defeat them. This led the Inca emperor to become overconfident and underestimate the enemy. After capturing the Inca king, the Spanish, though nominally keeping the Inca as ruler, effectively seized control of the empire. Following the execution of Atahualpa, the Spanish captured several puppet kings to further consolidate their power. Within the Inca Empire, some nobles and warlords chose to collaborate with the Spanish to safeguard their own interests, while others resisted. Pizarro exploited these internal divisions to gradually expand his control. After 4 decades of conquest, the Spanish finally subjugated the Inca Empire in 1572 and established a 300-year rule in Peru. The real Battle of Cajamarca. But in the end, when we look back, the Battle of Cajamarca seems absolutely unbelievable. 168 men against an army of 80,000, with only 5 Spaniards killed in the end. This sounds like nonsense, right? Well, it's possible that the numbers were exaggerated. This account comes from Spanish missionaries and accompanying soldiers, who may have inflated the enemy's numbers in letters and reports to the Spanish crown in order to gain more fame and recognition. Since the Incas had no written language, all the details of the event were controlled by the Spaniards. It's worth noting how the Spaniards claimed to defeat 80,000 with just 168 men. While the figure of 80,000 might be accurate, not all of them may have actually participated in the battle. The confrontation took place in the Plaza de Cajamarca, not an open plain, so there simply wasn't enough space to accommodate such a large number of people. Before the battle, the Inca king had already dealt with the local population, and Cajamarca had almost become a ghost town. The meeting place, the Plaza de Cajamarca, was an open space surrounded by buildings. On that day, the Inca king entered with only a small number of soldiers, accompanied by 8,000 men for protection. Pizarro, on the other hand, had scouted the area the day before and set up ambushes in the alleys of the surrounding buildings. hiding his soldiers inside. He positioned his cavalry behind the buildings and set up 4 cannons. Since this was the Incas' home territory, the Inca king had no reason to be wary of the Spaniards. He believed the meeting was simply a diplomatic gesture, a matter of friendly conversation and cooperation. The 8,000 men the Inca king brought were mostly nobles, priests, and ceremonial attendants, not soldiers. In other words, the majority of the people the Inca king brought were non-combatant monks and villagers, while the real fighting force of 80,000 soldiers remained outside the city. The Spaniards had only 168 men, while the Inca king had 30,000 soldiers. Even if Pizarro had hostile intentions, he would have been easily overwhelmed by the Inca king's army. Furthermore, in Inca culture, battles were expected to be fair and honorable, and ambushes and surprise attacks went against their traditions. The Inca king did not expect the Spaniards to use such tactics and thus underestimated their strategic approach. Moreover, since the Inca king had evacuated the local residents the day before, the Spanish soldiers were able to easily hide in the buildings surrounding the plaza, waiting for the right moment. From an overhead view, the Spanish deployment was clearly visible. They waited a full day and night, ready to spring into action the moment Pizarro gave the order, catching the Inca king and his entourage completely off guard. In reality, the battle quickly turned into a massacre. The Incas' formation was also unbalanced. A chief represented Atahualpa himself, surrounded by only a handful of brave warriors acting as the king's personal guards. The rest of the soldiers were mostly monks and villagers with no combat training. The 80,000 battle-ready Inca warriors did not participate in the meeting. Once the meeting began, the Spanish forces suddenly launched a surprise attack, and the Inca king and his entourage were completely unprepared. The situation quickly spiraled out of control. Spanish missionaries attempted to persuade Atahualpa to convert to Catholicism. After their failure, Spanish soldiers charged from all sides, starting a brutal melee. With superior weapons, the Spanish soldiers, whether swordsmen, warriors, or musketeers, easily overpowered the Inca fighters. In contrast, while the Inca warriors were brave, they were no match for the Spanish muskets and cavalry. The Inca could hardly inflict any harm on the Spanish soldiers, as if swords and spears were mere toys to them. Since the Inca had never encountered firearms or horses before, when faced with the Spanish cavalry, they were not only unable to counterattack, but also fled in all directions, losing their will to fight. After a massacre, when the Spanish soldiers approached Atahualpa, the chaos worsened. The morale of the Inca army completely collapsed, and all Inca soldiers and villagers stopped fighting. At this point, the Spaniards were able to control the remaining Inca soldiers, and the Inca were forced to continuously offer gold to the Spaniards in exchange for the release of their king. Eventually, after Atahualpa lost his usefulness, Pizarro ordered his execution. A year later, Pizarro's forces successfully captured Cusco, and the Inca Empire was brought to an end. For years later, remnants of the Inca army, taking advantage of internal Spanish conflicts, established a new Inca state in the Vilcabamba region, hoping to continue resisting the Spanish conquest. However, due to the vast technological gap in military capabilities between the Incas and the Spaniards, they were unable to bridge this divide. Additionally, diseases like smallpox inflicted heavy casualties on the Inca. After nearly 40 years of conflict, the new Inca state was eventually destroyed by the Spaniards. The Inca homeland was incorporated into the Spanish Viceroyalty of Peru, and the last major indigenous civilization in the Americas was wiped out. This also marked the beginning of the Latinization of the Americas. And that's a wrap for this episode of the video. I'm DR.RED Panda. If any of you have your own perspectives, or if you think there are any errors in the video, feel free to leave a comment in the discussion section. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe and give it a thumbs up. Until next time, take care.